scripture for the message is 1 John 3, verses 1 through 3. See what kind of love the Father has given to us, that we should be called children of God, and so we are. The reason why the world does not know us is because it did not know him. Beloved, we are God's children now, and what we will be has not yet appeared. But we know that when he appears, we shall be like him, because we shall see him as he is. Everyone who thus hopes in him purifies himself, just as he is pure. May God bless the reading of his word. Sam Nix was stationed with the military in South Korea, and he was on a spiritual retreat where there were quite a few newer Christians that had come there together. One of them, name was Kayang Cha Lee, and she shared the story with him. He said in those days, many homes in Korea were heated by charcoal briquettes that would be underneath the flooring. And in her house, this primitive system had malfunctioned, and carbon monoxide gas had flooded her whole house and nearly killed her. She was in a coma in a hospital for days. Her family posted vigil at her bedside. When she finally came to, they didn't have the heart to tell her the extent of her loss, but she surprised them by saying she already knew that her 2 children had died. The doctor told me when he came to look at me. What doctor, they asked. The one who prayed by my side and promised that God would watch over me. They knew that someone had been with her the whole time, and they didn't remember a doctor saying that to her, so they thought it all must have been in a dream. Well, the day she left the hospital, she was being wheeled out, and there in the lobby there was a picture on the side of the wall, and she said, "That's him, that's the doctor. What's his name?" "Jesus Christ," they said. There are many stories like this of people seeing Jesus. And I tend to think of them as signs of a greater time when we all get to see Jesus face to face. That time is going to be the goal of all creation, the summit of all of God's work, where we get to see Jesus fully as a child of God, what that means, and fully see ourselves as God's children too. That day is so unique that it can only be referred to here and now in signs. That day is what our text is lifting up for us here as John starts off. We see what kind of love the Father has given us, that we should be called children of God, and so we are. So we are, yes, called children of God now, so there's something greater to our life than what we can see. So the world doesn't know about this true life of ours because it doesn't really know about Jesus yet. That life can only be seen through him. So it's interesting, though, he says, so yes, we already, in a sense, are children of God, and yet it is not yet shown what we will be. The full extent of what it means to be a child of God is not yet seen in our lives. But he says, when we see Jesus, we will be like him, or we will see him just as he is. When we see him face to face, then we'll also be able to see and understand ourselves and our loved ones to be children of God through how Jesus is the true Son of God. This hope, he says, everyone who has this hope of looking ahead upon Jesus purifies himself, just as Jesus is pure. So we don't yet see ourselves as that way, and we tend to turn our gaze down just into things that we can see. I'm this person who does this or that. I have this kind of job, and these people are my relatives and my family, and that's who I am. And that's all we think the extent of our life is. And we're being told, no, there's something much bigger to our life than that. We don't see the fullness of our life until we see Jesus face to face. And when we see and know him and the way he looks then, only then will we be able to see ourselves, our true selves, as we'll be in eternity. That hope purifies us, John says, because again, we're always turning our eyes down, but it reminds us there's more to life, my life, than what I can see. There's something greater going on. Now, God knows our weaknesses here and now, and so that's why he provides these signs. As we said, that day is so unique. It's the goal of all God's work in Jesus for the world. And so there's only could be pointed to by various signs. So let's hear another sign, this one by Julia Tinkey. Julia was at the hospital in the middle of the night at her mother's bedside. Now, why was she there at that particular time? All she could call it was, quote, an impulse, unquote. She said, we knew that for weeks the mother was dying, and she had an inoperable cancer. But this impulse, she said, somehow this night I had to be with her. She had no idea why she had to be with her. She just knew that she did. Her mom was going in and out of a coma, and since she wasn't stirring when Julia got there, Julia prayed a prayer that she had said often at the hospital. Let her be able to go without drugs, numbing all her senses that stop her from being able to communicate what she was experiencing. Well, suddenly at the end of that prayer, her mother stirred. Julia? Are you there, Julia? She assured her she was. Her eyes opened. It's all right. I'm in God's hand, and it's so wonderful. Julia said as she was saying these things, she seemed bathed in light. And as I stared at her, the mysterious radiance enveloped me as well. I felt as if I were drowning in the love and joy on her face. She said the experience lasted seconds into minutes until almost an hour. Finally, she asked her, do you see God, Mother? Yes, face to face. It's so wonderful. Millions and millions of people, and light everywhere. So much light. Julia said her eyes were so filled with love. Tell others, Julia, about the glory of the Lord. It's so wonderful. Those were the last words her mother spoke. Her eyes closed, but her smile did not fade. Another sign. And yet, if the sign was so glorious, how much more glorious what the sign is pointing to. That day when we do get to see Jesus face to face on even a greater level than the sign. And finally, be able to see all of what God's love means, both for Jesus himself and for each and every one of us. That day is the goal of all creation, the finishing of all Jesus' work. So let us continue to hope for what we cannot see, as our call to worship said in Romans 8. We don't see our lives being big and wonderful and spiritual in this way, but Jesus has told us, you will see me as I fully am, and you will see each other as I'm making you to be. And as we have this hope, our hearts will be purified. We'll be constantly reminded that there's more to our life than we can now see. Or John put it better himself. Beloved, we are children of God, but it's not yet known what we will be. we know that when Jesus is seen, we will be like him, for we shall see him